All right, so welcome to Interbrews number 2. This is Britt Mooney, and I have a special guest with me on this interview. This is author, pastor, agent, dad, husband. How many other roles do you have there, Cyle?
I guess a business owner.
Business owner, mentor. You've got a lot of interns and people that work for you, even with the agency. Which I think is really cool. That would be something I would do. So I've got Cyle Young here, and so welcome, Cyle. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be here. It's great to be on your show here, and I look forward to talking to you more about writing and industry and what's going on.
Yeah. So one of the first things, I don't know if it's the first thing I heard about you, I was in, because I'm in a Word Weavers group that meets once a month, and someone actually mentioned you when she was, I forget her name off the top of my head, Luftwig, maybe?
Robin Luftig?
Yeah, Robin.
Yeah.
And she was kind of a guest host of one of our groups, and she was like, oh, you should totally meet Cyle. You'd love Cyle. And he's great, blah, blah, blah. And like one of the first things she said about you is your football experience, that you won a championship with Michigan, correct?
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
I won a national championship in 1997 with the University of Michigan.
Yeah. And, I was thinking about this because I saw a meme. I have another friend of mine who's a pastor in Cincinnati at Rivers Crossing, and he was on the offensive line. Were you offensive line or?
No. I was defensive line.
Defensive line. But anyway, it was interesting because he put out a meme that said, kind of gave these statistics about how all these great leaders were once, O-line people. And like not quarterbacks or wide receivers, but great leaders and CEOs. And I just thought it was funny. And I thought of you. I was like, well, I wonder what Cyle would think of that.
I mean, I would agree. I played O-line for a long time, but not in college.
Yeah. So after college, where did you go after college?
After college, I moved back to Ohio and started working. And so I was working in ministry, and I started working at a kind of a youth. I was a youth director of like a youth center for a while, and then I planted a church. And we planted a church and did that for 7 years.
Yeah, but that's not the church you're with now, because you're in Michigan now, correct?
No, yeah. Now I'm in Michigan, so I'm kind of like what I call a denominational mutt. So I've kind of went from after that 7 years, I went and was really doing a lot of youth speaking and youth camps, and so felt like I wanted to get back involved and really was feeling called to do youth ministry. So I did that for 3 years in another place in Ohio, and then through that, I ended up taking over the children's ministry and became the executive pastor of the church. And then a large church in Youngstown kind of came calling. And so we moved to Youngstown, Ohio, and I took over the children's ministry. I had about 400 kids a week, and it was a large church, about 1,400. And it was just a great experience, developed a lot of programs, really just saw a lot of growth. And then, we always just kind of felt like something else was missing, and that what was missing was kind of connection with people. So we ended up going back kind of home to where we started ministry with my family, and kind of were there for a couple of years, and then we moved to Michigan because we've always wanted to get to Michigan. So I'm the senior pastor of a church in Michigan, and it's a small church. We missed the small church mentality of a church plant, and so we like having a place where we can be in relationship with people and not just doing programming. And that was the 2 large churches I worked at. It was just a lot of programming all the time, and not enough time with people. So we kind of wanted to get back to that.
Yeah, I totally understand that, man. We were the same. We've been the same way, my wife and I, through missions and everything. Just it's always, for me, it always goes back to being able to have relationships and mentoring people and those kind of things. So at what point in there did you get into writing? Like, was it even before college? Like, at what point did you think, man, I really want to start writing some stuff?
Well, I always wanted to be a writer. I went to the University of Michigan to be a poetry major. I wanted to write children's books, and I hated the poetry major. They wouldn't let me do rhyming books, and so I dropped that, and then I went into religious studies. So I graduated with a religious studies degree. And so then I got just busy in ministry, but I always wanted to write. And I always look at this magazine and see these Christian writers conferences and say, one day I'm going to go. And then in 2005, our kind of world ended where our daughter was stillborn on her due date. And so, and dealing with that and trying to communicate what we were going through to family and friends, I just started kind of blogging about it. I was back in the days of like MySpace and Zanga. And so I was blogging about it just to communicate where we're at, really to be able to deal with it. And that experience kind of pushed me back into the writing world, where I started to get the desire to write again. And I think a lot of times when you're going through trauma, writing is a great way to heal through that.
Amen.
And so after that, my wife's like, why don't you just go to a writers conference? And so I went to a Blue Ridge Mountain Christian Writers Conference, and went down, and that was kind of the beginning of a journey, and started winning awards, and that kind of for children's picture books that rhymed, and so that was kind of the thing everybody thought was kind of funny. This big guy who played college football. I wrote a book about a Princess Penelope, this beautiful little children's picture book. And so that kind of made a name for myself because everybody was so shocked. And then that was kind of the start of my kind of journey into writing that I'm on now.
Yeah, and that brings up an interesting point. And I want to be careful because I don't want to say that you have to have experience in life to be a good writer. But it's been my experience that having those hardships, having those wounds, having those, I don't even know how to say it, just those really tough times in life, I'm kind of glad I got back to writing when I was older, a little older, that I didn't, just out of the gate at 18 decide I'm going to be an awesome writer and think I know everything, right? I really... I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? Just about because you were saying that your hardship and the trauma and some of that stuff, how it kind of fueled some of your writing. I would say that tragedy and trauma produces an emotional layer that doesn't exist for people beforehand, and they just never had those experiences. I think when you tie that into writing and learning the craft of writing, there's just a way that it can bring out that emotion in the depth of character, the depth of story, even in nonfiction, and trying to just the depth of the emotional connection that a reader needs, or speaking directly to a reader if it's a self-help book. So I think there's a necessity of having something have happened significant in your life. But I also know young writers who just get it and can write and write beautifully. Yeah. But I think it just depends on really your experience, what you write afterwards, and what kind of genres you tend to write in. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I said, I want to be careful. Obviously, someone who's 18, believe me, and you and I both know as pastors, they could have had some pretty traumatic things happen to them. And so I don't want to dismiss just youth in general, but I just know for me, going overseas, having some of the grief and hardship that we had, I think it made me, like you said, with the depth of character, just be able to understand people in a different way. And that helped me create characters, I think, that were more understandable and deep. So what kind of writing inspired you? So obviously maybe children's book. I know I've watched some of your videos and you really love children's books, but what are some other things that kind of inspired you as a writer?
I mean, I write a little bit of everything, and that's probably problematic for some. As my day job, I say I'm a pastor by day, a secret agent by night. My day job, nonfiction is something I'm drawn to, especially Christian nonfiction, as I work to just to improve myself, but also be able to equip and train people in my congregation. I love children's writing and children's literature. So picture books are something that I really think are just amazing and are almost timeless and evergreen. They just kids are the same. Every generation they just don't change. Little children, they begin changing as they get older. And then, for me personally, I love fantasy and science fiction. So, I write for my kind of fun. I write, fantasy novels with dragons and dragon riders, and so that's kind of my fun thing. And then I dabble in little romance books every once in a while. But so I write kind of more an eclectic approach. I write kind of what I'm feeling, I guess, is probably more so than anything.
Yeah, and so you got into writing. being inspired by everything from children's books and everything and winning awards. How did you get published first before you started getting into kind of being an agent? Like, what was your experience getting into being published?
Yeah, my first writers conference, I won a couple of awards, and I got published about 6 months later. I got a contract for a book, and I had a middle grade devotional come out called Belly Buttons and Broken Hearts with a small press. And so that went really well. That was kind of an eye-opening experience, learning the industry. I took my father-in-law to that same conference, and he got like a contract at the conference and on a baseball statistics book. And so it was just kind of an interesting year. And then I kept going back to that conference, entering more contests, winning more awards, and it really just opened opportunities for the future and being represented by agents. And that kind of changed my entire perspective on the industry and how I wanted to proceed in the industry, and how I looked at traditional versus self-publishing versus hybrid publishing. And really that's kind of opened up my thoughts as to where I want to go and what I want to do. And so, and I became an agent because I had some bad agenting experiences, and I really wanted to fix that for other authors.
That's awesome. And so did you get into the agency that you were already with? Like, so you said you had some bad experiences. Like, were you with Heartline and you kind of transitioned into that, or how did you get into that with Heartline?
No, I was with another agency, and the person's an awesome person, but I seem to find agents that life change, like major life issues. Like, I don't want to call it midlife crisis, but like just the time they decided to change career midstream and still kind of agent on the side. And for me, that meant that my stuff didn't get sent out. So my author career wasn't advancing, and there was nothing I could really do about it at that point. And so as a guy that's loyal, I stuck with the agent longer than I probably should, and the agent gave me the opportunity to get out about a year before I did, and I just didn't take it. It's like, no, I'll stick with him. And I probably shouldn't have done that. So, and then I went to another couple people in the same thing. They just had major life issues and weren't able to invest the time in sending my stuff out and getting out there. So I went through a couple-year period where nothing happened in my writing career, and I was winning all kinds of awards at the same time. And so it was a kind of frustrating experience. And for me, I think in three years I'd won almost 20 awards.
Wow!
And for my writing, for unpublished writing, and I had felt like I should be getting published. And everybody asked me, the editors, like, why aren't we seeing your stuff? I'm like, I don't know. And so I just kind of decided, like, there's got to be a better way for authors. And so there's got to be a way to work with authors in a way that they feel like they're equipped and they feel like their stuff's out and they know it's out, and you can still have a good relationship, and there's got to be a better process to create. And so I was telling that to another agent about kind of some of my frustrations of what I'd like to see change in the industry. And that agent said, well, someone just retired, and this was at Heartline, and would you be interested in joining our team? All the things you want to represent, we don't do, so you'd be a perfect addition. And so 3 days later, I was in Pittsburgh having an interview, and I became an agent that day. And so that's kind of what happened in my agenting career.
It's probably a good connection that you, as a pastor, saw a need, right? And you're like, hey, I could do this, right? I think one of the questions I wanted to kind of go back to was with your championship at Michigan, how do you think that has influenced you as a person, as a writer? Because, again, even though you're not writing books about football or whatever, but sometimes from what I read in sports, and I follow football and basketball and that kind of stuff, like, people who win championships have a very unique experience from what I can read. Like, they understand success in a way that sometimes others don't, or at least we have that perception that they do. Have you found that kind of true for you, like how to work hard, how to achieve things?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It's funny, I do have a Michigan football book coming out with Indiana University Press, so I am writing about Michigan football. But I have this belief that you can always work harder and you can always do more. And I think it goes from playing football at Michigan, just the expectations that were there. You can go outside of what you think is possible for your body. I mean, the amount of workouts that we did, and you never thought they were physically possible until you went to college, and then had to go be pushed beyond what you believed before was reasonable or doable for yourself. And so I really just carry that over to life in my ministry at church, in my agenting. I mean, I really believe that I'll try to outwork everyone. And so I don't want to ever be accused of not working hard. And so, because I just believe, like, for me, work's fun. This is my hobby. Like, being an agent's my hobby, although it is a full-time hobby, which is a career. It's what I do for fun. I go to writers' conferences for fun. And I believe you just work harder, you play harder, and you can achieve the level of success that you want to achieve. And every level of football I ever played, I was on an undefeated team. And so I think that I've just known my whole entire life what it looks like to work hard. And, had not only personal success in high school as an All-American wrestler, so I knew what it was like to carve out my own success individually, but also then as a team. So I just carry that over. I think it's naturally ingrained in me at this point, and I carry it over to my life.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because I can't remember the quote now. I'm trying to remember the quote, but there's a meme and there's a quote where he said basically the difference between a published author and an unpublished author is that one of them didn't give up, basically. Like the published author just kept working at it. And right. and I hear so many stories of people, and I try to encourage people too, like, just open your mind and think, like you said, I can do this. Like, you went to workouts and you were able to do things you thought were physically impossible for you or whatever. And I think that carries over into a mentality sometimes of, why can't I do that? If I can work hard enough and get there, I can get there. And now that you're kind of in the industry, what kind of advice would you have for, like we just said, for writers they want to write, they're starting to write, they're just kind of starting out? We've got a couple of these in my writers group, just young writers, people who are trying to gauge who they are as a writer. Do you have any advice for those kind of people?
I do. I've been there recently, within the last decade. I would say there are probably three things that come to mind right now. First one is just be memorable. If people don't remember you, you're never going to get anywhere in this industry. I was just watching America's Got Talent on my DVR before this show, and the people that you vote for, the people that win, are the ones that are memorable. And it's the same thing in this writing industry. I'll go to a conference and talk with an editor, and they'll send me an email later that week about somebody from the conference saying, "Hey, I know you represent this person. I just can't stop thinking about their book. Can you send it to me?" Or their idea, because it was memorable, or the person was memorable. I had one, I just got back from a conference, and I got an editor at a large Dormarket house sent me, "Hey, thanks for introducing me to this person. Like, I really clicked with that person. Can you send me their book?" And it's because the person was memorable. Like, it wasn't because they wrote the greatest book of all time. It may be, but we won't know that until it sells and gets a contract and releases and goes through editing. But ultimately, it was the person was memorable. So I think you have to be memorable. And kind of the part two of that would be, you got to network and get to conferences. You got to meet people. Being an author is a networking business. I think it's not so much in this industry what you know as it is who you know. And so you have to know the people that can make the world turn. For me as an agent, I spent a lot of time developing my contacts across editing houses. But now for me, it's easy. I'm a writer. They all know it, but I don't send them my stuff. And then I get emails that say, "Well, you need to start sending us your stuff. We want to take a look at it." So it's because I have relationships with them. They know me, and they take a look at my stuff. And so it's fun right now to I have a bunch of stuff under review myself as an author, solely because I've networked and built relationships, and I just have a natural affinity with the people that I'm in a relationship with, because they're good experiences and they want to take a look at the stuff. And so that's probably part. The second thing is go to conferences, and so to network, but also to learn. I don't know everything, so I'm not a writer who knows everything. I've learned a ton. I know I think I outwork people. I out train myself than most people. Like for me, when I'm in a car, I'm listening to podcasts. When I'm sitting doing work, I'm listening to industry podcasts, and I'm just trying to grow in my knowledge so that I can not only equip my authors, but I can be a better writer myself and be a better agent. And so I think that's an important part of networking and going to these conferences. And then the third one would be platform. Just got to build platform. I know it's the dirty word no one wants to talk about, but everybody seems to misunderstand. But platform is king in the industry. I just in the last month, I've got so many emails where they say, this writer's got a really good book, they got a really great voice, but they don't have any platform, and we just can't get behind this project right now. That's probably happened 3 times this week, maybe 4 that I can think of. And they're really great writers. And at the end of the day, that's where the industry's at. And so having a platform, having a sales base, having a fan base, developing that is, I think, one of the most paramount tasks that an author needs to do right now, even before they have a book that releases. Even if they just started writing a book, go create a fan base so that when you do have your book done, they want to buy it. And that helps sell to traditional publishers for sure.
Yeah, I think part of that transition, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but part of that transition seems to be that the physical bookstore isn't the place you go find books anymore. So for these publishing houses, it's all, not all, but a lot of it is online. A lot of it is an online presence that they've gotten to, and Amazon has changed that. And so for the author, they want authors who can manage in that kind of arena. I could be wrong, but that seems like that's been the change. Is it used to be a publisher could just take somebody unknown and just stick them in a bookstore, and that was your platform. But now that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, no, that's not been the case for a long time. So, if you have a following and you can drive people to those bookstores, that's the key. Can you get people to go to the bookstores and buy your books? Because that's where the publisher is going to make a lot of profits. That's where you're going to start trending, and that's where news and media are going to start picking up on it when you hit sales lists. And so that's what allows them to make massive amounts of profit. And they can't just sell 500 books and be happy. Each of their books has to sell tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of copies just for them to pay overhead. And so there's just a whole different mindset when you're looking with traditional publishers sometimes.
So as far as an agent, and so you deal a lot with agents and editors, you've been in that industry. So how long have you been an agent now? Remind me.
Just like a little less than 2.5 years.
Yeah. And so also you've won a couple awards also as an agent from what I remember. I can't remember the name of it, but about a few months ago you won some sort of sales award.
I was just I was top in the world in sales over the volume over the last 6 months. So I've sold more books than anyone in the last 6 months any agent in the world. So
yeah.
More contracts.
Yeah, so and that's pretty awesome, dude. It's pretty amazing. That's hard work. And at what point did you start to think that you should kind of mentor people? So one of the things I like about you is you've always got people around you. You've always got other people that you're trying to train. Like you're not just learning for yourself. That you've always got interns. You've got people on your team with different maybe strengths or skills maybe that you don't have as much of or something like that. So at what point did you start building some of that? I mean, you've only been doing it for 2 years. Was that right away?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the entrepreneur side of me. So. And the training side kind of mixed with the church side. You're always training people. You're always training another generation up. In the church world, I mentor 4 or 5 guys on a regular basis who are all over the country. And to me, you always should be pouring into other people. And so I do that in the agenting thing. And for me, it's always about goals. Like whatever I'm doing, I want to set a goal, achieve the goal, and set a bigger goal, and then achieve that goal. Or I get bored. So, like for me, like it's great. I outsold everybody in the world, but now I'm over the last 6 months. But now I'm like 12 or 15 books higher than the next closest person, and so now it's like, what's next? so now I'm going for over 12-month period, and so that's a goal of mine. I want to lead in sales and contracts over a 12-month period, and kind of all that's on Publishers Marketplace. which it's kind of shaking things up. I came out of nowhere for a lot of people. They just didn't know I existed, and all of a sudden I just started selling all these books. And so I know it's shaking up things a little bit because I'm not supposed to be having this level of success. But I just saw a way to do the industry different because I wasn't an industry insider. And so I've created a different model. And one of the things, agenting is fun and it's awesome, and you do books, but you can also do movie rights and television rights and audio rights and work with illustrators. And so do graphic novels, do all different age groups. And so for me, every one of those is just another thing. It's another goal. It's another opportunity to grow and to learn and to achieve. And so for me, it's hard to not have fun. This is not a boring industry because there's so many different realms where you can learn and grow and try something different and try to achieve your goals in that industry. So like right now I'm working in all those areas. Yesterday we just got off the phone with a movie production company, and we agreed to a shopping agreement on a story that we're going to be putting into a movie. And so we're excited about it. So those are just like these new endeavors. And then every phone call, every email is just this new possibility. And so for me, that's what's fun about being an agent. I know it's not, everybody wouldn't like to live that way, but for me, that's kind of the way I like to live.
So let's say there is a writer and he or she has been writing for a little while now. They've got a couple finished manuscripts. Or maybe just correct me, at what point should people start looking for an agent, someone to represent them if they want to get into kind of the more professional publishing world?
I mean, I think you should find an agent. You should start building relationships with agents now, wherever you're at. Even if you haven't written a book, you can still build relationships. You can go to conferences, meet agents, find agents that you click with personally as you connect with them. Like I go to some general market conferences and it's all agents for the most part. And you'll have 16 or 17 agents, and just start kind of getting to know them, because you want an agent that believes in you, but you want an agent you know is going to work hard. It's going to put your book in the right place at the right time with the right editor. And you can begin that process years before you have a finished product. I mean, there are people I go to conferences that haven't ever finished a book yet that I like. And if they send me the book, I'll take a good hard look at it. I may not represent it, but they're going to get a great opportunity to have it looked at because they've built a relationship with me, and I'm just going to have an affinity for them when that time comes. And so I would say, if you start now, even if you don't have a book, but if you do have a book, start pitching agents. There's hundreds of agents in the world. There's an ample number. Don't pitch them all at the same time. They don't like that. But start trying to connect with agents, go to conferences, email them, and just begin trying to build those kind of networking opportunities, because I really believe that agents make the world turn right now in the publishing industry for authors. And so that's an important thing to have.
Yeah. And what's some advice for authors as they start to network, or if they have a finished product, as they start to meet? I know you were on that panel at Realm Makers and you guys said some really good stuff, but what's some advice as they start to pitch, as they start to meet and talk about their work with an agent?
I would say be normal. Don't be crazy. Don't be a stalker. I have stalkers. When I go to conferences, there are people that stalk me. They won't leave me alone. Don't do that. So, because then you don't want them to email you all the time either. So I don't want to take them on. So just be normal. Like, we're normal people. I'm a normal person. So the things that I like are the same things that normal people like. So just sit down and have a conversation and know what you write and know how to pitch it. That's important. And, be able to communicate that clearly, especially if you have industry connections or you've got a fan base or following, be able to communicate that very clearly and quickly, because platform is important. But I would say those are the advices, and know that we all are different. So although we're normal people, we all have different likes and dislikes. And so try to find the ones that you think you're going to click with and pitch them first. Don't go to the ones you're not going to connect with, because then you'll get just disappointed and defeated.
Yeah. Stephen wanted me to ask you if he did bring a muffin to an agent appointment, what kind of muffin would you like? Oh,
I mean, it's a good question. If the muffin was for me or him, they're two different things. So if it was for me, I like those big muffins with those crusty tops on them, where you just rip the top right off and there's like the rest of it's in the like blueberry or lemon poppy seed, and those are probably my favorites, I would say.
That's awesome. And have you gotten into the coffee I gave you yet? Are you drinking it?
I was gonna have a cup, but we weren't on face to face, or I was gonna have a cup of your coffee today. So, yeah.
Well, it's called Brew and Ink, so I'm drinking coffee, but I didn't.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking, it's like, wow, we're gonna be drinking coffee together, and then I realized this is just audio. So,
one last thing, just as I asked some of my friends in the writers group, what would you like me to ask him? Ask him about what the market is looking for. What's hot in the market now? What's coming up? And I know we talked about that somewhat at the conference as well. But just for the people listening, and what's some of the things you're looking for, or the market's looking for right now?
Which do we have, like a genre or a market?
Just in general.
I can give you all of them if you want. I'll just go through all of them. Children's picture books in the general market. Nonfiction is huge right now. STEM and STEAM books are really big right now. Fiction, not so much. Christian market would be picture books. Board books are in both markets. Board books are more popular right now. Board books had a record year last year. Picture books are just so expensive to produce. Christian market, they're looking for concept books that are Christian worldview, but not necessarily overtly Christian at some of the bigger houses. And then some of the little houses are looking for nonfiction, kind of Bible story-esque with a new approach. So I would say those are some popular things. Again, every company is a little bit different. Let's go older age groups in the general market. Middle grade is really big right now. Middle grade, high concept middle grade is really big. So a high concept, which would be kind of in the middle grade range, would be big. YA fantasy is not so much right now. YA science fiction seems to be big. Romance, kind of literary across the board has really struggled lately. So I would say kind of those romance and science fiction. I know a lot of companies are looking for science fiction with science base, like popular science, and not necessarily space opera. Kind of is big in YA and middle grade in the general market. In the Christian market, I would say it's not necessarily the same. Fantasy is probably bigger. Science fiction, not so much in that market. And it would need to be kind of Christian worldview, not necessarily overtly Christian. Would be it's not really popular for teens and young readers to read like conversion stories and books with a lot of prayer in them. They just want to read a good story. And so I would say if you're writing middle grade and YA, that's kind of what you'd want to write in the Christian market. And all those markets, children's and YA and middle grade, humor is hard to find. And so humor if it's really good humor, can be a good quick sale if it's excellent humor, because it's just so hard to find good humor. And so humor writers can have some opportunities in all four of those different markets. Mm-hmm. And then in adult markets, let's go with like nonfiction. Nonfiction self-help is always big in the general market. Political science type books, political books, popular science books are really big. Nonfiction is huge right now in the general market. So I would say those are some things that are good targets. In the fiction side, again, same thing with YA. Science fiction is popular right now. Historical in the general market in historical fiction, alternative history, romance always has a market. Romantic suspense is big. I have a lot of people asking for Amish romance, even in the general market, which is kind of weird. An Amish romantic suspense, I'm still looking for that. I would say graphic novels have really taken off in the general market across adults and YA. So that's something to be looking for. In the Christian market and nonfiction, Christian living books are big right now. Resources for pastors and ministry professionals that are directed towards that audience can do well right now. And then I've done a lot of devotionals with some of my clients. So devotionals have seemed to be steady, and Bible studies have really picked up, which Bible studies were dead for a while. Mm. And then in fiction, fiction's hard in the Christian market. Everybody's struggling with fiction in the Christian market at all genres. So I can't say there's anything that's one big thing other than romantic suspense. So that's the thing that seems to be the biggest draw right now. Romance, and Amish romance and romantic suspense are the two big sellers that I'm seeing right now in the Christian market. Again, each company can tell you a different thing, but overall, as a general thing, those are some things I can tell you are trending in the markets.
Well, yeah, that's really surprising about the Amish stuff. You would have thought that would have kind of trended out by now. I mean, that's been a while.
I don't get it, but I mean, I don't read. I don't read it. I want to one day write it. It's one of those achievement things. Like, I can do it. I'm going to do it. But I'm looking for it. It's hard to find. We sold an Amish romance a few months back, but I've been asking all summer for Amish romance, Amish romantic suspense, and I think I've maybe got one pitch all summer. So it's hard to find. What
are some things that you can tell people? Why should they go to conferences? Why should a writer? Because, in the end, you're going to be spending a good amount of money, getting there, hotels, all that stuff. What would you say are reasons why it would be worth it for people to go to a writing conference if they want to be a writer?
I mean, I think because you can't make those connections anywhere else. I mean, it's lonely to be a writer sitting at your desk by yourself, and when you find a bunch of other people, hundreds of other people who are just like you, it makes you feel normal. You can't make the industry connections with professionals at your desk, so you have to go and do that. And I think contests are huge. When I won my first contest, it validated all the effort that I put in. So I think contests are big for people to gain the ability to know that they're doing the right thing, or they're growing, they're achieving. I watched a lady at a conference a while back. She won an award after 6 years of trying. She was almost ready to give up, and that changed everything for her, winning that award. And then the next year she won 3 awards because she'd finally gotten it. Everything started clicking, and it was just this big epic moment, and lots of tears for her and the crowd, and it was just this big moment. And it was life-changing for her and in her writing. So I think the validation you get from conferences can be significant over time, especially. And so I think those are some of the biggest reasons to go. Is everything that's happened in my author career has come from networking at conferences. Mm. I have a serious writer company with Bethany Jett. That came from connecting during a contest. We were competing against each other. And so all of my book contracts have come from connections at conferences. Many of the sales that I've made on behalf of my clients have come from people I've met at conferences or books I've pitched at conferences. And so for me, and all my awards have come from conferences that I've been at. So I think it's that valuable. And especially when it comes to contests. I had an editor tell me recently, she used to scour the contests winners of conferences to find any books, and then she'd offer contracts if she found an amazing book. So that's what she would do. That's how they would kind of scout talent, because they're trying to find the best stuff out there to publish it and sell a lot of copies. So you can win a contest and potentially end up with a book contract. That doesn't happen every time, but it does happen more often than if you don't.
Yeah, for me, a lot of times what I love about writing conferences is it always gives me action steps to do until the next one, right? It always gives me I need to start doing this, or I need to, sometimes things I didn't think I needed to do, it introduces new ideas, it gives me new kind of goals, like you were talking about before, to do over the next 6 months, get here and to get there. But I absolutely agree on all the networking stuff. It was such an encouragement to go to each one. Of course, for me, Realm Makers has been, the biggest encouragement, because it goes along with my passions for science fiction and fantasy. But I mean, the Cincinnati one was great, where I met you and met Cody and a lot of those guys there. I was so glad I went to that one. So for me, it's just about finding one near you, and obviously, you guys with a serious writer, you guys go all around the country, don't you?
Yeah, we go. I think we did 12 so far one-day events around the country. This year, taking kind of writers' conferences, 2 people, one-day writers' conferences. We have one coming up in September in North Carolina, Liberty, North Carolina, and then we have one in Ohio in November. And so our goal is we try to make the conferences affordable, because I used to spend $1,200 to go to a writers conference, and that's just not necessarily affordable, especially as a pastor. And so now I can go to them for free, so it's much better. And I get paid sometimes. That's even better. So that's kind of, for me, our conferences, we try to keep it under $400 to $500 total, with food, with lodging, and with the conference fee, because we really believe that people should go to conferences as often as possible. And so our hope is that instead of going to one $1,200 conference, maybe they go to two conferences in a one day in their area, and they just stay encouraged to write, because that's a big part of it for me. And I think that's the training aspect of sports. If you keep training and you keep training and you keep training, eventually you're going to get it. You're gonna train yourself to a level where you're proficient. And so for me, one of the reasons we've offered our conferences at such a discounted rate for everyone is to try to keep that training going for people. So we repeat people at every conference, because we believe that's the best opportunity for them to grow, is to have that extra push and then come back 6 months later and get a push again and repeat that process.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I think for the people in my writers group, it has been, we all say what an encouragement it is, because every couple of weeks we're getting together and encouraging each other that, we might be crazy, but at least we're all crazy together in this kind of journey to become writers and to be better and to push each other and to critique each other in a very healthy and constructive way and all that kind of stuff. So that's SeriousWriterAcademy.com. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. Serious Writer, our conferences are at SeriousWriter.com. We do have a writing academy at SeriousWriterAcademy.com, where there's classes by industry professionals that they can purchase. It's kind of like your writers conference in the safety and sanctity of your own home in your pajamas.
The information of it, at least, right?
Yeah.
So we'll put those links on the podcast information there. So dude, this has been really, really helpful. And I think it's going to be really valuable to people who are looking for more information about not just writing, but how to become more successful in writing. And I know that we haven't been able to touch on all of it, but I know for me, it's been great to be looking at those videos. I'm going to be signing up for BookFunnel. I was already on InstaFreebie, so you convinced me to get on BookFunnel. So yeah, just moving forward, always thinking, I think I can do this, I can do that, I can manage this next step. Just taking it one step at a time. So I really appreciate you just taking the time and just letting everybody know who you are and ways that they can just improve. I know you're always looking for good books, good writers, and so hopefully they get to meet you at one of these events in the near future.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm slowing down hopefully next year. I think I'm doing 30 conferences this year, so I don't think I'm doing that next year. I've got a great team. We've got 18 on my team now, so I'm hoping they'll take some of the burden of traveling, but they'll meet somebody associated with me, and my team's amazing. They're all probably more awesome and special and amazing than I, so it'd be great to meet them.
Well, I don't know if they're more amazing, but I would definitely agree that you've got an amazing team. I've met several of them, and they're just all great people, man. I think they're great. Well, man, I appreciate it, and we'll be signing off, and just raise a glass of inspiration, man. Keep writing, keep doing what you do, and drink a lot of coffee, right?
Will do. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, man.